I'm screaming doctors,
And it's 19 minutes now after 6 on your Wednesday morning. That means time for our weekly doctor visit with Dr. Stan Anderson. Good morning, Dr. Stan.
Hey, Pam, great to talk to you.
Well, we're going to bypass the need for therapy for Billy right now because the Cavs had such a gut-wrenching loss last night. But speaking of guts, how about we'll just talk about obesity and weight gain and all of those things, continuing our conversation from last week.
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting thing. There was I want to take you back historically. So back in 1944, during World War II, when the Germans were occupying the Netherlands, there was a famine that happened, and as a result, there was a disparity of food, and there were somewhere around, during that time, somewhere around 600 women that got pregnant during the occupation, and they ended up having starvation, and they ended up looking at the babies that were born in 1945. And what they found was almost all of them were underweight. But by the time that they hit adulthood, every man in Amsterdam born in 1945 had developed the diagnosis of obesity. And by the time that they were 60, they were all in the stage 3 obesity. So there's this interesting dilemma that women that experience starvation during pregnancy end up having a series of events that changes the brains of the developing baby, and the baby will always develop obesity. So it's just one of those interesting things.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, well, sometimes when you have something that happens to you, it's not your fault. So the people that ended up being born then, every one of them developed obesity, and then later on it was stage 3 obesity, and it was all because their brain was constantly telling them that they're hungry, and that was built in based on the famine that they had experienced from before they were born. So if you look at any of the hot spots that are going around in the world right now, Gaza, where you end up having the issues there, where you end up having, and that's just one. There's so many in Somalia, in Azerbaijan, in Syria, where you end up having food distribution that is not good. You end up having so many people that are on the brink of dying from famine, from starvation. Their babies that will be born will have the likelihood of becoming the diagnosis of obesity by the time they hit adulthood, almost always. So it's just one of those things that is one of the interesting dilemmas of science, that some people don't have a choice, and it's because of what happened to them.
And kind of in the same respect, you wanted to talk about antibiotics in children under the age of 2.
Yeah, and this is another new study that just came out, where what they were doing, we've always known that the more antibiotics that a child takes, the more likely it is that it's going to potentially damage the gut microbiome. So these are the healthy bacteria that live inside the small intestine. And a new study just showed that it is a 100% correlation. So there is a correlation with the number of antibiotics that a child takes before the age of 2 and eventually developing the diagnosis of obesity. So it's just another correlation that oftentimes people end up having an issue, and it's not necessarily what they've done, it's what happened to them or around them, and it changed their entire perspective. So, yeah, just one of those interesting things. So the first thing I say to mothers is we only treat with antibiotics, not because your child has a fever, but because you have a legitimate bacterial infection. Just because there's a nose or a cough or congestion isn't a recognition that we have to go with an antibiotic. Now, having said that, antibiotics are amazing, and they do wonderful things, and they have saved so many lives. So, yes, we need to do it, but we want to do it intelligently. We want to do it when it is appropriate rather than, oh, my child got sick at daycare, and so I need to do something again. The answer is no. Really, we want to try to treat it naturally if possible. Yeah, so just a couple of things that cause people to end up developing the diagnosis of obesity. And now the latest one that has really been more impactful is, why is it that some people with diagnosis of obesity end up developing complications and other people don't? So, for instance, not everybody who weighs 350 pounds develops diabetes. Many people do, but some people don't. What's the mechanism? What's the reason why some people with obesity end up having worse outcomes than others? And we think now it's our understanding that the fat in our body, the adipose tissue, is not just passive storage reservoir, but it's a critical player in metabolic and endocrine processes. So you can think literally of fat cells as an endocrine organ. And what they do is they end up putting out a lot of hormones. They put out high sensitivity C-reactive protein, interleukin-1 receptor antagonist, interleukin-6 tumor necrosis factor. All of these different chemicals are made by some people with a diagnosis of obesity more than others. So we now know that the reason why people with obesity end up getting more complications is because they end up putting out so many more noxious chemicals that then end up negatively impacting the entire rest of the body. So it's just one of those interesting things. Some people, they struggle with the weight their whole life, and it never has an effect on them. The vast majority of us, the more that we struggle with our weight, the more it negatively impacts so many other organs, and so it is more dangerous. So it's just one of those interesting feedback loops, feedback dilemma, that the more that we struggle with obesity, the more likely it is that we're going to end up having chemicals in our system that increase our risk for developing diabetes, joint pain, cancers, heart disease. All of those things are because directly we end up having the chemistry that the fat cells are making, and it tends to be turned on the older that we get. So there's some people who struggle with their weight and they have no medical problems, and then boom, the moment that they hit 50 or 55, that's when it seems like everything starts to go downhill. And the question is, well, what happened? Why did this suddenly begin to happen?
Yeah.
Why is it this domino effect where all of these bad things? I've been dealing with my weight. Maybe I've even lost 5 pounds, and now I have diabetes. What happened? And the answer is it took a while, but the fat cells finally turned on, and they started to make all of the negative chemistry. And it is the negative chemistry that the fat cells are making that leads to all of those bad things. So it's what's called the inflammatory reaction. And it is something that, weight loss has a huge impact in helping to turn that around. The problem is weight loss is really hard.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Not impossible.
It is not impossible. That's right.
The Cavs are down 0-2. Coming back is not impossible. It's going to be hard, but the Cavs can come back. So
Right.
tell Billy, there is a brighter day tomorrow. It's going to be okay. We're going to pull it together, and we're going to make better. So, just because you're down doesn't mean you're out. So, things
I love it.
are hard. Let's get going. Let's make it the best that it can possibly be.
The weather's going to be beautiful. The weekend, we're getting blessed with that. So I'm very thrilled. All right, Dr. Stan, we will chat again with you next Wednesday, sir. Have a good one.
Thanks, Pam.
Canton's Morning News with